Welcome to Plants, People, Science, a podcast brought to you by the American Society for Horticulture Science, where we like to talk about all kinds of things horticulture.
I'm Samson Humphrey. I'm a PhD student researcher at the University of Tennessee, and I'm one of your co-hosts.
I'm your other co-host, Kurt Rome, a university professor of horticulture at the University of Arkansas. We would like to welcome our audience today. Glad that you're here joining us.
And how are you doing, Kurt?
I'm doing real well. We're winding down the semester here. It's clear that fall is about over. Leaves are on the ground and being raked up. Winter is setting in. Temperatures are getting cooler and looking to the end of this semester, but looking forward already to the next semester and the new year.
It's funny you use the word winding down. I feel like things are winding up with finals coming, with students working on their projects.
Yeah, my students say things are not winding down. They have geared up. They are in full gear. I can see the excitement or tension on their faces.
But you know they're looking forward to their Thanksgiving break, which is about to happen. We're recording this the week before Thanksgiving. And I'm so excited. Kurt, it's so beautiful outside. The leaves, like you said, I know you said they're on the ground, but they're not quite on the ground for me yet. I'm really enjoying this fall.
Well, we actually had one of the most beautiful fall color years that I've experienced here in a long, long time. We had a relatively wet September, mild temperatures through September and October. So we had a lot of leaf color development, and they retained on the tree for a long time. So it was a really spectacular autumn for us.
That's awesome. And I had my final basil harvest for this experiment I've been doing for a little while. And so I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, and I'm putting my plants to kind of the end of the season, and we're going to talk about dormancy today, and I'm hoping all of my plants are headed to dormancy. We've been having mild temperatures, so hope everything shuts down okay.
Good luck, Kurt. Yeah, that is relevant because our guest today is ASHS member Dr. Harlene Hatterman-Valenti from North Dakota State University. Very cold, much colder than what you and I deal with, Kurt. Dr. Hatterman-Valenti is a professor and assistant department head, and she also leads the High Value Crops program at North Dakota State University. Her team focuses on grapes and tomato and peppers and all sorts of different things. But her main focus is wine grapes. Today, we're talking with her about two new cultivars she's produced these past few years. And yeah, very exciting things. Let's give this interview a listen.
Hello, Dr. Hatterman-Valenti. It's a pleasure to have you here today. How are you today?
Kurt, I'm just fine and happy to be here.
Well, it's great. Before we get started, let me ask you a question. I know we're colleagues. For the conversation for our audience, how would you like for us to refer to you? Would you like us to refer to you as Dr. Hatterman-Valenti, or do you like to go by first name basis for the conversation?
First name basis is just perfect. I remember one time I was teaching a course and someone asked, how should we refer to you? And I said, Harlene's just fine. And some other faculty members said, oh, she was aghast. She goes, no, it's Dr. Hatterman-Valenti. You worked hard to get that PhD. And I said, I'd rather be very personal and be on a first name basis than ever to go and say, I'm holding this PhD over you and like that. So Harlene is just perfect.
Wonderful, Harlene. Well, it's great to have you here. For our audience, tell us what your current position is, what you do now, and then I have a couple follow-up questions for that.
Okay. So I am a professor at North Dakota State University. I'm also an assistant head there. My position is high-value crops, so it allows me to wear many, many caps, which is probably good or bad, depending on how you look at it. There's never a day that I can say has been the same, that's for sure. I started in August of 2000. And so last Oh, no, this spring I actually went because of how they do their academic year. I actually celebrated my 25 years, which is the first time I got to celebrate anything at being NDSU.
Well, that's wonderful. Go Bisons,
Yes.
North Dakota State Bisons. You always actually have a really good football team there. Tell us, before North Dakota State University, where did you start? Where did you do your undergraduate work, graduate studies? What led you to North Dakota State University?
Okay. Well, I actually had a basketball scholarship for Kearney State. It's in Nebraska. Now it's the University of Nebraska at Kearney. And after that, I moved to Lincoln, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I actually had a biology wildlife emphasis for my major, and thought about being a game warden or something like that. Um, but there aren't a lot of state parks in Nebraska, especially on the east side. And I grew up on a farm on the east side of northeast part of Nebraska. So while I was looking for jobs and like that, someone said, you should think about graduate school. And I was like, no, I just got done and I don't have a huge debt. I don't want to go and pay for more schooling. And they said, no, they actually will pay you to go to school. And I was like, get out of here. I couldn't believe it. Um, and so I went and talked with a couple faculty members, and I had an opportunity to go into plant pathology or horticulture. And I said, geez, do I want to always be trying to figure out what's killing a plant, or do I want to grow plants? So I went to the horticulture direction. And then while I was there, the weed science was just down the hallway, and I found out it's even more fun to kill plants than, So I went a little bit further and really started my emphasis in weed science. After that, well, I got married, and um, my husband is in weed science. We knew we wanted to kind of keep things separate, so I wanted to keep my emphasis in horticulture, and he was in more agronomic crops. We were in Ames, Iowa, and I had an opportunity to do a pre-doctoral extension associate position where I could go and get my PhD. I could actually, I'll put it this way, I could have the extension associate position as long as I was working towards my PhD. So I did that. I had a double major in horticulture and agronomy, trying to keep more my horticulture side, and I was responsible for um, horticulture, weed science, right away, and waters. But Iowa doesn't have a lot of waters, so that wasn't too difficult area there, and really enjoyed that. Um, so much that it took me about 6.5 years to finally finish. And after that, I took a position with FMC as a research biologist. We in Princeton, New Jersey, and was there for about 4 years before we moved back to the Midwest. My husband had an opportunity, and so with our family, we moved to Sioux Falls, where I taught at a 2-year college, uh, a number of horticultural courses, and we were there for almost 3 years, and this opportunity at NDSU came open, and 25
That's
years later.
quite a story. Well, you've had a lot of experiences. So, you start off as a basketball star,
Well,
an all conference academic star. So, tells me that you're competitive and smart. That's pretty cool. And now you're at North Dakota State University. How and when did you get into grapes and into wine grapes? I mean, I'm going to admit something to you. When I think of wine grapes, North Dakota is not my first state that I think about.
Correct. I did work on grapes when a little bit. We had an extension specialist at UNL, Steininger, and he had grapes. So where we had our horticulture farm, research farm, I got to dabble into grapes a little bit. But it wasn't until we finally passed the Farm Winery Act in 2003 in North Dakota that there was actually the possibility and the interest. There were some people growing grapes, but basically there was no real industry. So after that, I initiated a variety trial, got involved with a multi-state project on grapes, and we were trying to see how things were growing. Remember having some very disastrous years where things were really dying back. Had a lot of help from private breeders and as well as with that multi-state, the University of Minnesota has a cold hardy grape breeding program. So we were trialing some of their stuff. We were utilizing a lot of Elmer Swenson, who was a long term and long time had been breeding grapes as a private breeder. I think at the time when we started, he was probably in the last years of his life, but he had such an illustrious life of just breeding grapes for not only table grapes, but wine grapes, cold hardy wine grapes. So we tried a number of his cultivars, University of Minnesota cultivars. There's, some other private breeders that had some like King of the North and like that. So we put them in there and it took probably about 5 years later, there was, or not quite 5 years later, there was, the wineries were going, gosh, it's really difficult to go and get the quantity of grapes that they need on a consistent basis. There was the first winery in North Dakota was Point of View, which is just outside of Minot in north central North Dakota. And they said the University of Minnesota grapes just aren't hardy enough. So there was a push to go and we were trying all kinds of management studies to try to increase cold hardiness and, not having the kind of success that is needed for them. So there was a number of the North Dakota Grape Growers Association that went and talked with our Ag Experiment Station director, who was also the dean of our college, and really persuaded him to go and say, hey, we need a super cold hardy grape for us to go and consistently. If you have to rely on secondary buds for most of your grape production, you're never going to have enough grapes to make any kind of a vineyard profitable or even close to being profitable. And so in 2008, probably 2009, we started breeding grapes.
That's amazing. I don't know that much about grape production. What is the difference between table grapes and wine grapes?
Okay. Well, for table grapes, to be successful now, you need to have a lot of, well, sweetness, but you don't want seeds. And so with the wine grapes, you're really looking for some unique, some complex flavors. Of course, you don't want some of those off flavors, which you don't want in table grapes either. But what I usually tell people is, there's few cultivars of table grapes that are hardy enough, because when you're trying to develop, or just like when you're trying to develop more colorful flowers, you usually give up something. It's always, or higher yields, you usually end up giving up something. And so if you went for table grapes and seedlessness, you end up usually giving up a little bit or more on hardiness, cold hardiness. And thus, there are a few cold hardy table grapes, but really not a lot. And that's an area that could really use some expansion.
Sounds exciting to work on this, because it's important. It really matters to farmers. It really matters to producers. But okay, so again, I don't know that much about grapes here. I'm learning a lot in this conversation already. You are in North Dakota. That must look very different, like in the field, if you're looking out at a crop of grape plants. It must look very different from warmer climates. What does it actually look like if you were standing out in that field?
Okay. And that was, with it being such a new industry for a lot of growers, I think many of them went and said, oh, let's look and see what California does. They know how to do it. They've been growing grapes for a long time. So most everyone thought, oh, we have to do a mid-wire with a vertical shoot positioning, because that's what all the grapes in California are. And really, we can't grow Vitis vinifera grapes in North Dakota. We have to have a hybrid grape that is crossed with something that is cold hardy, be it our native river grape, which is Vitis riparia, or there's other ones that Vitis estivalis, Vitis amarensis, that all can go and provide cold hardiness. Of course, you want to go and include some of that, the background from something like Vitis vinifera, because the true wine grape has all those fruit characteristics that anyone who drinks wine is accustomed with. So I think I got off on see, I always get off on these tangents.
Yeah, but that was interesting.
Yeah.
So you have those other species of Vitis naturally occurring in North Dakota, or were these you were picking up the genetics from programs in Minnesota and Wisconsin?
So Vitis riparia is native to North Dakota, and so we have collected a number of Vitis riparia that we are using to get that cold hardiness right now, I would say we're utilizing those more as getting those genetics into parents. But as far as where we initially started, we were trying to use elites that we knew were cold hardy and making crosses there, and then slowly build up our parental block that we're now using to go and get what I call the super hardy cold grapes.
Yeah, they're awesome. We have been looking at your post on Dakota Primus and Radiant. Is that how they're pronounced?
Yeah. Primus. I guess it all depends. You know.
Yeah, they seem awesome. But I'm struck by what you just said because it sounds like it takes a lot of time. How long did it take to develop Dakota Primus and Radiant?
Yeah. So those crosses were in 2009 and 2010. And so, which for a program that was starting from square zero, except for the fact that, we did have, some private breeders actually gave us some seed. They said, hey, we have this seed, plant it out and start evaluating things. So really, with the release, I'd say we were well ahead of what most breeding, when you look at most grape breeding programs, and if they had to start from square zero, it would take a lot longer. It was about 13 years for us.
That's amazing. Could you tell us a little bit about these cultivars? I read that they have surpassed common commercial varieties in their yield and winter survival. They sound really promising.
Well, we have the perfect test ground, that's for sure, to go and evaluate cold hardiness. So we tend to get what they now call these polar vortexes coming through. For us, we get a number of Arctic blasts, so we're always able to test true cold hardiness. I think, well, actually, with a grape, there's probably 3 areas where you can actually have cold temperature injury. You can have that at the acclimation period when the grapes are trying to become acclimated for dormancy. They're putting on periderm and really getting ready for the winter. Then you have like your December, January. That's like the coldest time of the year, and that's where genetically, does that grape, can it withstand minus 40 degrees? Because we can get minus 40. We've gotten minus 40 probably every third year in the winter. And then it's the next phase is when they've already obtained all their chilling requirements and they're just waiting to go and get ready to grow. And that's where a lot of fluctuation in temperatures above freezing, dropping below freezing, can really go and cause damage to those vines. And then, of course, when they start leafing out, and then you have another cold blast that can also do a lot of damage. So for us, we're trying to find vines that go to sleep early. For these vines to start to acclimate, it's not only the cooling temperatures, it's the shortening of the day length. Now, there are some that are very much strictly day length. As the day length gets shorter, they start to shut off. We'd like to see a vine that starts to yellow the leaves come Labor Day because, I just heard, what was it? Day before yesterday, the historical low in North Dakota was 17 below zero. Now, that hasn't been for a few decades or so, but I mean, to be mid-November and to be able to go and tolerate minus 17 degrees Fahrenheit, you got to have some grapes that start to really acclimate early, aren't fooled by what they call Indian summers, where we get cool temperatures, then it warms up again. And I had a graduate student that simulated that in a growth chamber, and he showed that, there are a number of these cold hardy grape cultivars that, because of their background, be it that they have a lot more Vitis vinifera in them, they're used to more that Mediterranean temperature where they have that very long fall. And so if we get these cool temperatures and then it warms back up, they're going, oh, hey, I can keep going. And they don't know that the door is going to be slamming shut here, anytime. And that has, caused a lot of our winter injury just because they don't acclimate early enough.
Yeah, that acclimation, like you said, there's two components to that. One is the decreasing daily temperature, and the other is the photoperiod. It's interesting. I've never thought that in your case, you probably almost need to separate those physiological responses and really be selecting those that are photoperiodic sensitive and acclimate in response to photoperiod. And temperature will always have an effect, but they really need to respond to the photoperiod.
Right.
So they don't respond too much to the temperature. That's interesting that you've separated those kind of characteristics and physiological traits. So tell me a little bit about the growth pattern. So when do you like them to start their dormancy, their leaf shed? When do they break bud in the spring? When do you see bloom? When do you get to veraison? And when do you normally have harvest? So run me through the cycle of a North Dakota wine grape.
Okay. So we're hoping that they will, we'll start in the beginning of the year, typically.
Okay, good. Yeah, I started in the fall because I'm looking outside and it's fall.
Yeah. So for us, we'll see bud break probably first part of May. Maybe a little bit earlier. We try to delay our pruning as long as possible, trying to have them not wake up as early as possible. Partly because even at Fargo, the last chance for a frost is probably May 31st.
Wow.
So now that has been inching backwards because of some of the warming, but there's always that possibility. And actually, I had someone, I think I was reading an article, they were saying that North Dakota has had snow in every month of the year except, I think, August. So.
Well, that's unusual weather.
Yes. So we try to have them not wake up too soon. Sometimes I worry about that because we already have a really short growing season. From the last frost to the first freeze on average is about 130 days. So these grapes have to do a lot in a short period of time. So they're growing, we'll have flowering, usually occurs early part of June. They grow very rapidly there, and we'll have veraison probably in that first part of August time. And then it's a race to see, to hope that they get ripe early. We'd like to probably mid-September is for many of these that we start harvesting. And then hopefully have them start to acclimate and get ready. And I'd say mid-September is probably about the earliest. You'll start with your whites, and most of your whites will be ready before your reds. Your reds take a little bit longer. You want a little bit higher bricks on those, and so that will take a little bit longer.
The winter injury you get, is there a certain time of year that you're really concerned about that? Is it typically early winter, late fall, early winter? Is it November, December? Is it January, February when we think the absolute depth and pit the voider,
Yeah.
or is it spring frost and in late season freezes? What is there a time of year that you see as the most susceptible for winter injury in your grapes?
For us, I think it's more that early fall. Um, if we don't have a great year with a lot of good growing degree days, these vines are going to struggle to ripen. And so when they should be thinking about putting down more periderm, they're probably still trying to ripen these grapes. Then we can go from a 50-degree day on average down to 10, just like that overnight. Um, and that's where I feel we have most of our damage occurring. Now, if we were probably state below us, South Dakota, they may not have, and the further south, Nebraska, then they may say, no, it isn't our fall, it's spring, because they have that much longer fall for those vines to actually, and they probably also have a longer growing season, so they have a lot more GDDs, and so they don't see the fall as problematic as we do in North Dakota.
That is fascinating. So there are all these different traits that could confer winter hardiness and allow for more winter survival. I saw for your releases that we've talked about, they have better winter survival, and I maybe I didn't read far enough in, but why is that? Like, what biologically causes them to have better winter survival?
Well, that's probably with genetics, and the fact that we had several, well, more than several. We had probably 15,000 or so individuals that we've been going through to find that needle in the haystack, as they always say, where the genetics just fit together so that you had good quality fruit for wine and you had this cold hardiness. Uh, and, I, I can't say that I put those together that way. It was just, the ability over time and our cold conditions. And I just told somebody the other day, I was like, boy, I've been here for 25 years. I haven't seen a growing season that has been the same. And I can probably say I haven't seen a winter that has been the same either. Uh, and so these accessions are really, they get everything thrown at them, and kind of like how the University of Minnesota went and found Itasca, is they had a polar vortex, and it survived. It looked great.
Was that the
Yeah,
2018, 2019 very challenging conditions?
yes,
Mm.
and our standards all had severe dieback, and these two, they look pretty good. I was really surprised. And, that is one of those aha moments where you're going, okay, now, but, one location doesn't mean that it's going to work everywhere. And we have growers, I said, in the north central, we have growers out in the western part. And so what we did was before that, 2018, 2019 time, we actually had made cuttings and we brought them up to the Minot Research Extension Center, and they had a planting there. And we were able to show that in that even colder environmental conditions, they are far exceeding the standards there.
My colleague John Clark is a good fruit breeder and a fun guy to talk to. He always said, breeding has a huge amount of science and technology in it, and then magical things happen. You get that right combination of genes, and you get the phenotypic expression, and the environment helps you. You're out there selecting things, working really good out in your field, thousands of seedlings. And then the weather helps you make a really clear decision.
Yes.
That's those magical moments of it. I'm interested in a little bit of the North Dakota. You said you got growers all over the state. What's the wine industry in North Dakota like these days? And, I know some states with I'll call them minor industries, and I don't mean to demean that. They'll say, it could be a state labeled wine if it's 10, 15, 20, 40% or 60% must grown in state, but has also imported must for blending. Tell us about the state of the industry that, you're creating new grapes. It has to become a backbone for them.
Yeah. Well, so initially they had a tier system where they had to work their way up on how much of their grapes had to be purchased from within the state. And boy, I'm thinking about 4 years ago. That was right before COVID that they actually got that changed because they said, well, we've been working on breeding these grapes. We're trying to find more consistent grape cultivars for them. But in the meantime, what are they supposed to do? It's hard to go and consistently have these grapes available. And so they did change that law that they don't now have to have, it was going to be up to 33% of the wine had to have grapes from North Dakota in them. All the wineries still kept their labels, which were all based on cold hardy grapes, because that's the only thing that really grows around here. So it isn't like they were going to, oh yeah, I have a Merlot that, I grew in
Right.
my backyard. Yeah. So that has worked out nicely, I think, for the wineries. There's about 20 wineries, maybe a little bit less, 18, 20. We just had a new one open this year. As far as the industry, I think they're really starting to understand how to, tourism is a important aspect. You talk to a number of these wineries and they'll go and say, yeah, we had somebody stop by, North Dakota was on their bucket list for a winery. They had to hit everyone in the United States. And there's a number of these programs now that, people traveling with RVs can go and stay at their place. And I think it's really working out nicely. We also had two wineries that recently had some rather large tourism grants. So they want to expand and really get into that tourism aspect.
That's amazing. That is so exciting to see that develop. I assume that wasn't the case a few years ago.
Yeah, right. Well, as long as it keeps going up, I think it's wonderful.
Absolutely. So the way I see it, you spent years working on these cold tolerant grapes. 2023, you publish and release your cultivars, Dakota Primus and Radiant. And so that feels like a culmination in something amazing to me. What are you working on now?
Well, I'd say that was probably a first step.
Yeah.
So both of these are basically white wine grapes. Although Dakota Primus has a reddish skin, and actually, there was a winery down in Kansas, part of this multi-state, who they actually went and made it into a rosé, and that was very refreshing. So there are different wine styles that I think Dakota Primus can be made into. But we still are looking for a ultra cold hardy red wine grape. I know the University of Minnesota has just released 3 table grapes. So I'm sure. Well, and we've been dabbling in some of that as well. Because the local foods, I think farmers markets would love to be able to have table grapes that were grown in, locally available. So there's a lot to do, and I've had some amazing graduate students, and without their help, I know we wouldn't have gotten this off the ground. I also have a research specialist that hands down is like the best in the world. So it takes a village to go and get things accomplished like that. And it wasn't me by myself. That's for darn sure. I was probably just the small cog in the whole thing. Without all of their help, and hard work, nothing like this would have ever came about.
That was wonderful. Oh my goodness. Kurt, do you have any final questions?
Well, I really think I really admire you and commend you, because working in horticulture, working with fruit crops in a what I'll call a challenging and strenuous environment like North Dakota winters, and you've been very persistent, you've been successful, and you're kind of making a difference. And from my viewpoint, and just even from today's conversation, so you're adding both to our knowledge of the discipline and understanding winter hardiness and this genera of plants, but you're also really helping your growers out, and I appreciate that. What do you have planned for 2026? You got something exciting that you're really? It's that time of year where we got to kind of think we got to wrap up this year. I get that, but it's also as a fruit guy, I always am thinking next year will be the best year ever. So what's going to be best for Harlene next year in 2026?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I don't make real long-term plans like that. I just, I'm like your typical farmer. Next year, it's going to be better than last year. And I'm just going to go and work my darndest to go and try to get that accomplished.
And take the weather as it comes, I guess.
Always have plan B, C, maybe even D in your back pocket, because you might need it.
Well, you're making tremendous progress and you're helping growers, and we really appreciate that. I look forward to reading your publications in our journals, and hope to see you giving a report on some of your progress at the ASHS conferences.
Well, yes. I have the 2 introductions for Hort Science. I've just been trying to find time to go and finalize. I have to just go and just say, yes, let's get it going. So those should be coming. I did go and say by the end of the year. And as fast as time is going, I probably need to go and start working on that over Thanksgiving, because we'll be at the end of the year here in no time.
It's right upon us.
Yes.
Well, what a delightful conversation. Thank you so much for taking time to visit with us and sharing your story. I hope you still play basketball a little bit. For our listening audience, she's wearing a North Dakota State sweatshirt with the colors. She's repping the Bisons really well. I hope you get out and get to shoot some baskets occasionally.
Yep. I went and I was telling, we were at a men's basketball game Monday night, and I was talking to the athletic director, and I went and I said, my competitiveness never really got going until after I finished college, because in college, there wasn't any Women's National Basketball Association. But after college, then I started playing pickup games. And if you won, you stayed on the court. And that's where I got really competitive because,
That's a great
it was
story.
so.
Well, thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot, and I think our audience did too. So wish you the best for the holidays and the beginning of New Year. And I hope the weather treats you like you need to have the weather treat you next year for your research.
And I really appreciate this opportunity, both you and Kurt and Sam. This was wonderful. Gave some great questions, and you were very relaxed, and you can tell that you guys have done this for a while because it looked very professional, and you had no concerns whatsoever. So that was awesome.
Well, it's easy to have conversation with good conversations.
Well, thank you.
Wow, that was an awesome interview. What did you think, Kurt?
She had a really interesting story about her training experiences and how she ended up in North Dakota State University. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed her approach to breeding for a cold environment. And quite honestly, I respect her optimistic tenacity at her program, what she is accomplishing there. Her release of new climate-adapted, climate-smart cultivars for North Dakota growers in such a short period of time is really pretty amazing.
I completely agree. And I feel like you need that optimism. If you're in such a cold environment, it feels dramatic to me because I was trained, I did my undergrad at the University of Florida. And so like tropical crops were on the menu. Like I did ginger and turmeric research, very, very different. And so I read about what it was like to grow plants in cold climates, but it's so cool to actually hear from someone who's doing it and hear, we had that horrible winter just a handful of years ago. And those stories just really put color into my idea of what it's like, what it must be like to grow crops in those cold environments. You've always been in the South too, right, Kurt?
Well, I went to graduate school at Ohio State University and during a really cold period of the early 1980s, a memorable cold period. And then I worked at Washington State University. I remember my first day in Washington State University on September 21st, the fall equinox. We had 2 feet of snow. And I thought, what have I gotten myself into?
Oh, goodness. And here you are. So it didn't scare you off too much. That's so funny. Yeah, it's also so interesting to hear from breeders. Like, I just want to note this because I always think about it, how I don't know what it's like to be working on the same crop for 25 years. I don't know what it's like to have that like long-term team, and you're building this team over the course of several years and having students come and go. It just is fascinating to me to hear how she makes progress over time and how she sustains the passion for it. It's invigorating.
I think that's a characteristic about many of us as horticulturists, and that is our passion and our optimism. Mm-hmm. We love what we do, and I think that really is almost a guiding light, that passion and that optimism, that we know that what we do can really make a difference for both our scientific knowledge and understanding, but also to help people. I really enjoyed today's conversation.
Me too.
This is Kurt Rome and Samson Humphrey, your co-hosts. Thanks for joining us today. The ASHS podcast, Plants, People, and Science, is made possible by member dues and volunteerism. Please go to ashs.org to learn more. If you're not already a member of the ASHS, we invite you to join. ASHS is a not-for-profit, and your donations are tax-deductible.
This episode was hosted by Samson Humphrey and Kurt Rome. Special thanks to our audio engineer, Andrew Sheldorf, our research specialists, Lena Wilson and Andrew Sheldorf, our ASHS support team, Sarah Powell and Sally Murphy, and our musician, John Clark. Thanks for listening.